Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and as usual, it is Sunday, and I have a plugin for you. Although I also got some updates on other things going on. It's all good. So the plugin that I have for you, and I'm doing this video earlier in the day. I hope we don't get too many lawnmowers in the audio, but I'm doing it early in the day before it gets to be 100 degrees, and it's impossible to do this with the lights and all. I can actually do videos on how I make these lights and things too at some point if you want, or you can ask me on Monday because I do the question and answer thing on Monday. This is a little plugin that I'd like to call VinylDither because it is a reboot on the VinylDither. But what I'm going to demonstrate it with is something a little different. Something else I am developing, which is a downloadable sample set of the Rickenbacker bass that you can hear over my shoulder, or see over my shoulder. You can't really hear it over my shoulder. It's not even plugged in when the camera view is bigger. That's been through some changes because I wanted to try tape wound strings, which I am now sold on, as a result of the advice of the engineer William Whitman. But I had a set of new roto sounds on it, so I thought it would be a darn good idea for me to sample those as a proper prog rock style bass tone before changing all of that, putting on tape wound, flat wounds, and then never having to change them again, because that's kind of not the point with tape wounds. So what I'm showing you, rather than the same old rock track over and over, is little bits of jamming in the middle of this sample set, and I'm still working on the sample set. But when I finish doing it, I'll also put up the raw audio files on my SoundCloud to be downloaded at 24-bit 96K. Now, how would you deal with something like this? There's a little plugin that I use called Golem. It does this. Now that might have got by you, so let's behave as if we have two plugins today instead of just one. Here's how this sample was set up. One of the sides is a DI, except for it's not really literally a DI like it is in the rock track that I had. Instead, it is a Sansamp VT bass. I was just looking at it over there. And it is set to a DI sound, but it's kind of gritty, kind of bass boosted, kind of heavy. In fact, I can show you by simply... That's the sound of a Sansamp DI. The other side is, as I like to do with this Rickenbacker, this is the bass pickup, but the bridge pickup goes into a guitar amp, and that sounds like this. So when you combine those tones, you get an absolutely killer prog rock style bass tone. And I'm kind of playing all over it and making a big mess. I don't play bass enough to really be in practice with it, much less when I'm just jamming out and trying to make a lot of noise. This is after about 40 minutes of painstakingly playing one note after another, so I thought I would throw in a bunch of noise making and a bunch of just randomly jamming out, because if anybody was going to sample out of that, they should also have interesting sounds, like, for instance, let me see, how can I do this? Hold shift maybe? How about we turn on, nope, that did it. I'll never quite get used to Logic's controls, even though I'm most used to it. But I thought I should be able to make sound effects like this available if somebody wanted to sample them. And the way this works, since we are running through Golem rather than the raw sound, which is a stereo capture, and it's being made available as a stereo track, what you do is you use Golem on the 2 channels as a stereo input. This is the raw DI. That is only the guitar sound, or the guitar amp sound. And you can also use offset to delay one or the other tracks against each other. And if I shut that off, I can make it a little more obvious as to what's happening. See, with that, one is being much more delayed than the other. The balance is the same. But we're offsetting one track against the other. And that is a tool for people who are doing guitar cabs and things and are really into micro-adjusting the delays of one track against the other track. So that's Golem. If you missed that one the first time around, and you have use for combining multiple mics on something, or a mic and a DI like in this case, and it seems like it would be used to you, well, there you go. But what this video was really about was VinylDither. So now that we've got a sound of sorts, we can also do VinylDither. And it's the same thing as the other Dither stuff that I've been re-releasing. Same deal with, you can set it to 24-bit and output through it. You can set it to 16-bit if you're looking to do a CD output and need to record directly to that. And then you can also crank up DeRez for a loud noise floor kind of stuff and 1-bit audio. Now you'll notice that this is not exactly the same as something like TPDF. I have TPDF right here, so hush. Thank you. Let's skip this ahead to a different track. I decided that I wanted to do flat wounds. You can hear that VinylDither does have a certain amount of background noise even when nothing is happening, although it turns the noise into a kind of crackliness. Whereas TPDF is just a straight noise background. And again, I wanted to do, I switched the bass to tape wounds, one, so I don't have to keep changing the strings all the time, but also because I thought I might like the sound better, which I did. Again, raw DI, and the guitar amp sound. So I decided that I liked that for a sound. And we can demonstrate how VinylDither and TPDF react differently to different sounds by using it. One thing I should point out is that although I put DeRez in all of this, so you can audition this stuff, and although you can use this as an alternate method of bit crushing, when you do a high enough quality dither algorithm, you stop getting the bit crushing effect. It really doesn't do the bit crushy thing nearly as well as like raw truncated stuff does, so you're going to get something different that way. It will kind of work, but here, this is heavily bit crushed, dithered. And this is the slightly crackly, crunchy noise in the background of it. And then TPDF, as you can hear, it's a brighter noise, maybe more distracting, somewhat maybe less natural sounding. This sounds a little bit like rain or something. But neither one really goes silent, and neither one really does what you'd call a full-on bit crush. To do that, I would go to something like, see here, if you don't do the airwindows starter kit and just install new updates.zip, what you basically get is this. This is what people have paid for over the years of keeping me and a Patreon going, is a pretty large selection of plugins that you can use. And these are all available to you for free because people thought it would be good to keep me working by supporting the Patreon. I'll be talking to you a little bit later about other things I'll be doing with the Patreon if it continues to grow, which I probably will, give it time. But let me see, I'm looking for DeRez or possibly DeRez 2. I wonder which. Let's call it DeRez. And with DeRez, this is just truncation. So what we get here this is very different from any dithered DeRez. Let me find a spot maybe earlier on where I'm just not playing a million notes a minute. Has some silences. Except for that proper DeRezing doesn't give you silences. Proper DeRezing gives you full-on truncation bit crush, so it's grinding. Doesn't actually want to go silent. Whereas an equally loud VinylDither gives you just as much bit crush. This is literally what it's doing, is it's bit crushing just like DeRez is. But a dither stops you from hearing it as bit crush. This is what truncation sounds like. Let me rewind that. This is what VinylDither sounds like. And I could also throw on TPDF, but I think you get the point. So there you have it. The plugin that I'm releasing is VinylDither, this reversion of it, where you've got the two bit depth outputs and the DeRez control for either auditioning or bit crushing stuff. And again, like I say, if you do a proper dither or some kind of high performance dither, you get kind of the effect, but you're not really getting your full-on DAW style bit crusher behavior. I really ought to make a gating bit crusher. In fact, I can demonstrate that quite easily. Give me another second. If I move this here and then dig into my large pile of audio units for the DC offset, which is going to be in here unless it was called DC voltage. Don't mind me hunting for a thing. Oh wait, that's B, not D. What am I talking about? So DC voltage is kind of dangerous to mess with in terms of if I yank it one direction or another, the output of your YouTube video is going to be like voltage, and then maybe your subwoofers will break. Don't play with this unless you know what you're doing. But in conjunction with something like, and there's no point using them with VinylDither or anything like that, but I showed you what was happening with the DeRez. Let's go and find that sustained note again. So what we're doing now, although I am sitting at a continued, actually no, DeRez is engaged, so it probably isn't. What we're doing now is DeRez is doing a massive bit crush, and then the DC voltage is offsetting it just enough that silent parts of the DeRez are not flickering back and forth between the two lowest amounts on either side of 0. Instead, it's going to sit on one of them. And the end result is like this. It gates. And as you can see, it takes very little. Gate it more aggressively with tiny amounts of DC voltage. So this is what normal bit crushing is like. There's the compressed quality of just raw truncation down to the 0 point. And then we can also gate it and make it be silent by offsetting it just enough that it clamps itself to 0 when it's a low enough level. And by comparison, something like VinylDither, you're simply not going to get that crazy behavior. Instead, you're going to get a noise floor because it's a dither. Some of them aren't, like Beam, for instance, but this is a dither of sorts. And the background sound is way less effective than you'd think it should be. So there you have it. That's pretty much what I have for you plugins-wise today. And this has been a bit of a walkthrough. It turned out to be of Golem, which is what I'm doing for that stereo bass, the DI mic setup, and mixing it into a single thing and then being able to adjust it to taste. Then you got VinylDither, and then I demonstrated both DeRez and how you use DC voltage to make it gate in case you didn't want just a straight up overwhelming raw truncation roar of background noise. So yeah, there we have it. And that's your plugin. Now what I was also going to talk about is some of the other projects that I've been working on, which is, and projects other people are working on too while I'm at it, because there's kind of a lot going on, and it's good. I like it. There's a lot going on in multiple ways. I have been getting together a computer system that is capable of running VCV rack. Yes, I've got the hardware rack. I do intend to get back to using that, and I'm building more and more stuff with it. And when I'm really satisfied with it, I'm going to start streaming whether people like it or not. And that's going to be much as it was, except for I'm going to have funny visual effects and things going on. But that's not the only thing that's happening. There is somebody out there who his project is called Windows, and he is porting airwindows plugins to VCV Rack, including things like Console and MV. And I have played with those and they worked. And I think he's gone public at this point. I think it's out of beta and he's actually starting to move forward with it. And I'm going to be using that stuff when I stream VCV Rack. And when I stream VCV Rack, since it's not really what I use for doing listening music for me, that's going to be more in the way of teaching people how to do stuff. And I'll have my little microphone and headphones and stuff, but I'll be watching chat and responding to it, and we'll just build stuff in VCV Rack together. That can be the sort of educational portion. And I'm kind of looking forward to it. That's not going to replace the Monday Q&A stream. It's going to be an entirely separate thing for about the same amount of time. I run for like a number of hours that's equal to what the Patreon is at the moment. So right now it's about 1:44, an hour and 44 minutes or so. There is also somebody who is working on porting the airwindows Linux VSTs to LV2. And I'm very pleased to hear about that, because I'm not really competent to port stuff to things. It took me forever to even get Linux VSTs, or indeed Windows VSTs together. But I absolutely support anybody who's doing it. As soon as that goes live, you'll be hearing about it, and I will direct you to it. And lastly, I've had this plan about what I was going to do if I got enough of a Patreon that I could start doing hardware type stuff. And this is kind of where that's leading. I've devised a way to really do kind of homebrew, build your own stuff out of chips, hardware hacking. I haven't done as much of it because there are many balls in the air. I'm doing many things. But here's one. I have a lot of this perf board now, and it is designed to be exactly the height you need for either it's exactly the height you need, or that you need to trim it a little bit. But I think it's exactly the height that you need for making a Eurorack module that you could put little holes in and bolt it on. But if you're just using this perf board, you can get simple wooden boxes and thumbtack it to the box with a thumbtack through these little holes. It's exactly the right size, meaning that the cost of your enclosure just went from hundreds of dollars to next to nothing. And that's exciting to me. And I can make these available for very cheaply. And I can send people these in a little box like this. I am learning whether it will, because you see it fits nicely into the little box. I do not know whether the epoxy board will smash and shatter if I try. But the cheapness of it, it's like, it's probably worth trying, and I'll just see what happens. And then I have lots of these little chips, and these are the kinds of things that you'd use to do your circuitry. And if I cut them into thirds, because they come in large things that are like 3 times this size, you can cut those into thirds and fit 8 largest size chips into these. And 8 chips is like a little less than $2, I think. The chips are about 39 cents each. And the idea is, if you were to get these through the hardware hacking project that I'll be building if the Patreon gets over $2,000, then you should be able to throw a couple of bucks and get enough to play with. You don't want to just get one of these. You want to get a little pile in case you wanted to build a big synthesizer. Like, here's some of these things, right? These are all in the size that fits neatly into that box and that would not end up being that expensive. These are IC sockets. I think these should replace jacks and in some cases switches. The idea is to be able to build stuff out of just raw wires and chips and stuff for very, 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 very cheaply. These are exclusive OR gates. They're the 4070. And the thing about these is you can make the Blue Lantern Mini Shimmer uses these, and many other people have used them, including, I think, some old Roland synthetic hi-hats. You can run square wave oscillators into these and make really interesting sounds, or use them as logic gates. These are counters. This is your sequencer. Again, 39-cent chip, but this is your sequencer. There are many examples of 4017s being used as you build your own sequencers. But if you can build your own sequencer on a piece of perf board with just some wire and stuff. Oh, by the way, I got a couple of thousand of these. They were surplus. They're 500K pots. You can adjust them with a little screwdriver. I'm looking for more. To the extent that I can get things like that, I would like to get insanely large numbers of stuff like this so that I can send people dozens of these, and then they can make their little a mixing board or oscillator tuning for as cheaply as everything else. So I'm leaning towards this kind of stuff. I like them because you can bend these wires over and then connect them to things. And these also have a little dust jacket in there, which is just random chance. I just happened to stumble across these guys. But I'm going to see whether I can't get some more. And let's see. So those are the counters. These are simply flip-flops. You can use these for various things, like an octave divider. There's a circuit for that. These are op amps. So are these. With these, you fit like 17 of them into the little slot, but op amps can be useful, so you might want lots of them. And it's the same deal. It's like getting a hold of bunches of these, because if you buy them by the 100 or by the 1,000, you get a volume discount. And then making them available in these little smaller containers so that people can have enough to start fooling with. Here is a DAC. It is a 8-bit digital to analog converter that you might use for some of your craziness, building weird things with these circuits, or use switches and then modulate something using that so you can have an actual control voltage that way. These are also real cheap. It's a little chip. 4049 UBE tube sound fuzz. This is also what you get out of the, what is the name of that damn, I want to say Swarm, but I don't think the Wasp. The Wasp filter is based on the 4049. And if you use lots of these little inverters in here, it has the tube sound fuzz tone. It's made out of field effect transistors, so it's a soft clip. It's, in plug-in terms, it would be like density versus 80 clip. It's a soft, smushy clip. And you can build stomp boxes out of these. You can build a filter out of them if you use the Wasp schematic for it. And 8 of them for less than $2. Same deal. People should be able to have this stuff. This is a pulse tool. This you take a pulse in, and using some kind of resistor or potentiometer control, you should be able to take a gate or a pulse and then output a length of pulse that is whatever length you want. It's the sustain for whatever it is. And also, you can delay it, meaning you can make swing using these, or do all kinds of other interesting stuff using these. And I discovered them, and I was like, oh my god, I have to start playing with them. And then I'm too busy making plugins to play with them, but, we're going to get around to it. And lastly, PT2399 delay. Not exactly the same as the other ones. The other ones can be like 39-cent chips. This is more like $1, a buck or $1.50 or so chip. But fits in the same thing. You could buy 8 of them. You can buy 10 of them on like Amazon all day long. But if you were getting something from me and you knew that it was going to be coming in a single box, the idea is to be able to get stuff in these categories so that you'd know, like, I need 2 of these things and then this. Well, I'd put in some kind of padding so that it doesn't turn into a maraca. But yeah, this is what I'm shooting for if the Patreon gets bigger. As you can see, I'm already putting out plugins at a blinding rate, and I have been doing for years. And I showed you that. I'll just show you that again here. So this is what Patreon does. If you are on the Patreon, or if you just know what I'm doing, you can download these for free. This is the complete list of everything that I've done over pretty much the last 10 years, but these are all the free ones that I have put out over the last 2-3 years or so of working full-time on airwindows on Patreon. And all of these do different interesting things. I admit it's a lot of work to go and find them, which is, figure out what they do, which is why I did the Airwindows Starter Kit, where you can begin with much less. But if you enjoy this sort of stuff, or if you would just like every possible sound effect that you could conceivably imagine, then this is your lucky day. These are for you. They are free because this is all Patreon supported. And I want you to have them because that's just how I roll. That's what I'm doing with my life. And, hey, we finished up the video. It hasn't gotten unbearably hot in here yet. It's supposed to be like over 100 degrees where I'm at. It's going to be ridiculous. It hasn't gotten unbearably hot in here yet, and the day is still young. So with that, I think it's time for me to post my video and get my butt out of here. Hopefully go to somewhere where it's cooler. What could be cooler than this, though, right? I'm asking you. So, on that basis, I have been Chris from airwindows. I hope you have enjoyed this little talk, such as it was, and the stuff that I'm showing you, because honestly, I feel like with not doing the 2 music streams that I was doing for months and months, it feels kind of like I'm not doing enough. So I thought I would give a little talk about the stuff that is going on in case you thought I was not keeping busy. So on the back of that, I will talk to you guys later, or indeed Monday when I do a Q&A session. And laters. Bye-bye.